Shlama Amkhun, welcome to my video on the Shana Suryaya, on the Syriac language. So here you see the exact same thing written in the same language. Make sure that you can see it, sorry about that. In the top, you see it in the Syriac characters, and the bottom, a form of the Syriac characters using Latin. What I'm using is the Society of Biblical Languages transliteration keyboard for Hebrew. So that's linked in the description below. Please use that if you want to be able to transliterate on your computer without having to resort to trying to find characters off the character map and doing it. If you're dealing with Semitic languages, the SBL Hebrew transliteration keyboard is a must. I believe it's the same keyboard that they use for transliterating Greek. So and I'm also following the Library of Congress, and it's become a standard way of transliterating Semitic languages, especially for Aramaic, Syriac, and Hebrew, that all have similar characteristics. So here, this isn't an L, this is a lamed. This is a khwasa. This is a sheen. So it's lishana, just like here, lishana, and sur, ya. Just as here there's simket rwasa, here there's simket rwasa. You'll discover in future videos, coming up very quickly, that this way of transliteration helps you actually see some things that in Syriac are understood by the mechanics of Syriac characters, that they hide whole consonants away from your view. That will be apparent. So when you transliterate properly using this method, you're forced to account for all the inner mechanisms and understandings of Syriac. It's not as complicated as it sounds. Let's go with the simple concept for this video, which is bagad kfath, or bagad kfath. Some people may call it bagd kapt, but bagad kfath is how you would see it in Kasha Yosef Plata's grammar, and it's the most standard. So what is bagad kfath? 6 letters that have 2 pronunciations, 6 consonants that have 2 forms. And the 2 forms that they have are the plosive and the fricative. So those are technical words. Plosive sounds like exploding, and it's exactly that. It's a letter that explodes. So the letter beth can be pronounced as b, and b is a plosive. Think of it as a letter that you can't hold on to for a long time. Take a different sound of W. Ooh, you can hold that. Or of F. You can hold it. But take the letter of B. You can't do that unless you're just going to repeat yourself. Ba 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 ba. You can't go b for more than once. It's plosive. But it has a mate. It has a fricative or friction, right? A friction mate. So what is if you add some friction to your B, you get a V, or you get a wa. Today, most Syriac speakers outside of, I think, India and Iran would pronounce this as a weth with a W sound, or as a V, which would be more Iran, India. And there are some kind of reconstructed pronunciation enthusiasts that would go, instead of, for instance, our Father, we would say awun, the liturgical way, awun, and they might say avun. But either way, it's the fricative of beth. I would just see it as a W sound. So this is beth, and this is a softened beth. It has a W sound. So if I were to write that word that I just said, our Father, I could go, that's a ptacha, that's a beth, let's soften it. And then you've got arwasa and a nun, awun. How would I pronounce this? Awun. And in Syriac, of course, the Syriac script, it would be ptacha, awun. Make sense? The wonders of two directions. Okay, so each one of these 6 letters, Beth, Gemel, Dalet, Kap, Pe, and Tau, have both a plosive, which is what they are without any markings on them. Their more simple form would be the plosive. So if you look at this, that's Beth, that's Gemel, G, Dalet, D, Kap, K, P, 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 and Tau, T. All those are sounds that explode. You can only make them one time. B, G, D, K, P, T. However, what we will do is put a dot at the bottom, which in classical Syriac is always due to predictable grammatical rules. And that goes from B to W or V. G to R. So it's that guttural R. It's not the H of German, but it's the R. So if we had Gemel, now we have Ghamal. We have Dalet, and that's a TH pronounced with your mouth first in the position for a D. So if you think of the letter of D, and then you go, so it's Dalet. Dalet just became Dalet. Dalet. K, a K sound. K becomes a Ch. Chap. And this is the most accurate letter for the sound of Ch. The other letter that even most liturgical pronouncers would say it as a chet, is actually a het. And that's regional. The preferred pronunciation would be het. So if you say the word like, I would say mrahmana, a more nerdy way of saying it would be mrahmana, or a more al-Qushnaya way. Also, there are dialects where that's said. Pe becomes we, so a W sound, or sometimes an F sound, but that's usually transliterating a foreign word, mostly in modern. Within classical itself, it's usually a V or W sound, again the W being preferred. And Tau becomes Thau, becomes a hard TH. Yes. Let me fix that. So Tau just became Thau. Sometimes when we want to make sure that the reader knows that the letter is not supposed to be softened, we can put the dot on top so that we know that's Beth, because by default it's Beth. But if we want to really make sure it's not with, it's not the W but the B, we can put the dot on top. Usually Gemel, definitely Gemel, definitely Dalet. The dot on top is not as necessary as the dot on bottom, and the dots in general, these kinds of dots are not the ones that are always necessary. Classically, Syriac would be written with a heavier square dot that really distinguishes things for those who know the grammar. But if you were wanting to sound everything out, like in a gospel or a liturgical book, you would put all the dots down, not necessarily the ones on top though. Cap or chap, definitely cap. Pe or fe, definitely pe. Tau or thau, definitely tau. So let's look at them partnered up. Beth becomes with, and here we have Beth becomes with. That would be pronounced, and let me switch over to the Latin alphabet, as a W, right? This second one would be pronounced as a W. Sorry about that. Beth, Beth, both of these are the W sound here. Gemel here, and in between Ghamal, Ghamal. Dalat here, in between Dhalat, that softer fricative sound. Kap, kap, chap, chap. Pe, pe, and this usually becomes a W sound. So there's a word that means soul or self. It is written nun, tacha, pe, shin, skapa. But because this pe gets softened, fix that. It's pronounced nausha. So here we would have that pronounced nausha. Let's do that again, this time with the proper Syriac script. Sorry, I'll try to make future videos a bit smoother with the script transition. So that would not be pronounced nafsha, it would not be pronounced napsha, it would be pronounced nausha. That P gets its fricative version, which is not generally an F sound. Although F is the proper fricative, it just gave way to the W sound. And if you understand something about kind of the historical impacts in languages over time, even in Indo-European, for instance, Greek had the digamma, which was an F sound, and also a what-like sound. So there's a connection between P and then its fricative, F, as well as F's tendency to fall into a W or a V. So you can see F and V being similar sounds that they kind of, one can overtake each other. So probably it was originally pronounced something like navsha. So thank you, and again, subscribe and turn on notifications. See you next video. Goodbye.